Hello and welcome, I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top headlines this hour. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky holds an hour-long meeting with Donald Trump in Davos ahead of addressing world leaders. Trump says everybody wants the war to end and claims a settlement is coming very soon. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte says a new framework with US President Donald Trump will require allies to quickly ramp up security in the Arctic. The comments come as European allies respond to Trump's shift on his push to acquire Greenland. President Trump inaugurates a new board of peace at the World Economic Forum to support the Israel-Hamas ceasefire. Trump says the body will work alongside the United Nations and aims to shape Gaza's future, warning that Hamas must disarm or face consequences. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer tells Denmark's leader that Donald Trump's decision to drop tariff threats over Greenland is a pragmatic, common-sense move. Trump backs away from using trade pressure or force to pursue control of the Danish territory, saying a deal is in sight. Nominations for the Academy Awards are being revealed as the film industry waits to see which movies and performers make the final list. The Oscar ceremony will take place on March the 15th in Los Angeles, hosted by comedian Conan O'Brien. Colombia imposes a 30% tariff on about 20 Ecuadorian products and suspends electricity sales to its neighbor. The move follows Ecuador's own tariffs on Colombian imports, with Bogotá saying the action is a trade correction and not a sanction. 3 people have died and 1 is critically injured in a shooting in Lake Cargello in New South Wales. Police say the suspect flees by vehicle and remains at large. Bangladesh says it will not travel to India for next month's T20 World Cup after cricket authorities reject its request to move matches to Sri Lanka. The Bangladesh Cricket Board says it wants to play the tour. We start this hour in Switzerland at the World Economic Forum, and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy suggested a trilateral meeting between Russia, the United States and Ukraine in the United Arab Emirates this week. He has also said that security guarantees for Ukraine won't work without the involvement of the US. Speaking at the WEF in Davos, Zelensky emphasized that while the UK and France are ready to commit forces on the ground, the backing of President Trump is crucial for a successful coalition. Zelensky also mentioned that documents aimed at ending the nearly 4-year Russian invasion are nearly ready. He criticized Russian President Vladimir Putin for not facing trial, highlighting the contrast with Nicolas Maduro's prosecution. He thanked UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer and French President Emmanuel Macron for their support, but reiterated that the US remains the essential backstop for Ukraine's security. He urged Europe to act decisively, especially in addressing Russian oil and frozen assets, as the conflict continues to destabilize the region. Let's listen in to some of the comments.
Instead of becoming a truly global power, Europe remains a beautiful but fragmented kaleidoscope of small and middle powers. Instead of taking the lead in defending freedom worldwide, especially when America's focus shifts elsewhere, Europe looks lost, trying to convince the US president to change. But he will not change. Today we met with President Trump, and our teams are working almost every day. It's not simple. The documents aimed at ending this war are nearly ready, and that really matters. What about the ceasefire itself? Who can help make it happen? Europe loves to discuss the future, but avoids taking action today, action that defines what kind of future we will have. That is the problem. Why can't President Trump stop tankers from the Strait of Fleet and seize oil, but Europe doesn't? Russian oil is being transported right along European shores. That oil funds the war against Ukraine. That oil helps destabilize Europe. So Russian oil must be stopped and confiscated and sold for Europe's benefit.
Joining us now to discuss the developments coming out of Davos is Jasmine Zerohi, a journalist. She joins us live from Vienna. Thank you very much, Jasmine, for taking the time in joining us. We have just heard from the Ukrainian president make a speech just around an hour after a closed-door meeting with Donald Trump. Given the stance that Zelensky held during this speech and the comments that he made about Europe having to make its own decisions, how do you think that meeting went?
I think it went quite well, because now we have hope that Europe may actually take actions to lead Ukraine and Russia to negotiations. So, of course, with the participation of the U.S. and the President Donald Trump, we have hope that maybe this meeting could give Ukrainians and Europe in general hope that this war will come to an end. So I'm personally quite optimistic about it, but we have to wait and see how it goes. I think in the next couple of days.
Indeed, and of course this came as two envoys have left for Moscow. Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner aim to meet President Putin in Moscow later on in the next 24 hours or so. Where does this say where we are at in terms of an official peace deal being fallen through?
I think Ukraine now needs peace more than anyone else. Unfortunately, nowadays, in these like cold days in winter, Ukrainians are suffering from the lack of electricity and heating in their houses. So I think this could also put a lot of pressure on the Ukrainian government to accept any compromises that Russia could offer. So the situation that is going on now in Ukraine, besides war and missiles and all the things, this like a problem that touches everyday life of most of Ukrainians will possibly put pressure on the government, on the Ukrainian government, to make a deal to stop the war, because I think this is the only way to like for this war to come to an end, because it doesn't seem to end with the military force. I see it's most probably is going to end through the deals, like to make a compromise or deal with Russia.
Jasmine, thank you very much for taking the time and joining us. It was a pleasure to talk to you and get your insight. We now move on, and more news coming out of Davos, and the US President Donald Trump announced that he has secured total and permanent access to Greenland in a deal with NATO. This deal comes as NATO plans to enhance its security presence in the Arctic, a move aimed at countering growing threats from Russia and China. Trump backed off from his earlier threats to impose tariffs on Europe over Greenland, signalling a shift in his approach to the situation. However, Denmark has made it clear that its sovereignty over Greenland remains non-negotiable. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte expressed confidence that the alliance could swiftly address additional security requirements for the Arctic, hoping for progress by early 2026. While the details of the deal are still being negotiated, Trump emphasized that the agreement guarantees total access without any time limits. this diplomatic shift has helped ease tensions between the US and its European allies, although questions remain about long-term trust. Joining us now to discuss this is Keith Vaz, a former British minister, joining us live from London, and Mark Sutherland, a geopolitical commentator, joining us from London as well. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us here on the programme. Of course, we awoke here in Delhi with some statements coming from the US president. A big sigh of relief seemed to fill that room in Davos as Trump said that he wasn't going to use force to take Greenland, an idea which to many Europeans seemed inconceivable. But Donald Trump has now confirmed that he is not going to do that. Keith, Donald Trump has been known to pull out of plans that he has, known to make verbal threats that then turn out not to be true. Do you think that this was Donald Trump's plan all along? Do you think he has achieved what he set out to do with making those provocative comments towards Europe? That, of course, includes the tariff threats as well. What do you think changed?
Good afternoon, Thomas from London. I think that we now get the measure of the man, and you have correctly summarized it. You overreach, everyone goes into a headless chicken mode, and then they come up and they provide you with firm assurances and guarantees, and then you climb down gently to a position that everyone thinks is reasonable. So that is what I think normal political leaders would do. It's what poker players do, I understand, and deal makers. But in Donald Trump's case, I think he does actually make it up as he goes along. And he makes these statements knowing that the world's media and every nation on earth is going to be concerned with what he is saying. And then he finds a pathway, or somebody finds a pathway for him. In this particular case, it's Mark Rutte, who is a former prime minister himself, now NATO Secretary General. He is the one who called Donald Trump his daddy, I think affectionately. So they obviously get on very well, daddy and son. And he probably said to Donald Trump, I'm just paraphrasing here, I wasn't obviously in the meeting, look, don't you worry about the security of Greenland. NATO is going to look after it, and I'll get those Europeans, the British, the French, and the Norwegians in particular, who he doesn't like because they didn't give him the Nobel Prize for Peace. We'll get them all to pay more. Let them pay for it. And you don't have to pay for it. So you'll end up not having to pay for this little part. I'm not sure, though I was a minister for Europe, NATO was not part of my responsibilities as such. They come under the Minister of Defense. And I think Rutte is being very clever to try and deal with this. And he's done more than the UN has done. For some reason, Donald Trump does not like the UN at all, probably because he loses every vote on it, and prefers an organization that does not have votes, which is NATO. But clearly, I think this is a victory for Macron, Starmer, and the Chancellor of Germany, because they have been very firm. Do not do anything to Greenland, because we will defend Greenland. And that would have been, in the words of the Polish Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk, the end of the world, because one NATO member attacking another is something that nobody can ever recover from. So yes. Rutte has obviously sat down, explained all this to him, and said, don't worry, Mr. President, we'll do all this. I mean, he might have even mentioned the fact that they won't even come and join in the World Cup. To Trump, it's all interrelated. On the one hand, for example, which is a story on Ukraine, Russia is the enemy. And in another context, you invite Russia to sit on the board and pay $1 billion for the privilege of doing so. Russia becomes a friend. This is, as Mark Carney said, and I've become a big Carney fan, a wonderful speech at Davos, which I'm sure, Thomas, you've covered. Brilliant speech. That may be where we all have to be. We all become Carneyites in the middle, middle-ranking people, not the big powers, because at least we have a pathway to know what's going to happen.
Okay, Keith, I want to bring in Mark next. Of course, as we've said, there's a huge development today at Davos. What do you think changed, Mark, on when it comes to Donald Trump changing his stance on Greenland, dialing down this rhetoric? Is it that same strategy that he used with those Rose Garden tariffs that he announced back in April of showing a something that was and talking about something that was so drastic, and then bringing that level down, and in reality going through with a less dramatic option? What changed for Donald Trump, Mark, and what kind of deal do you think could be on the horizon when it comes to Greenland and the United States?
Thomas, good to be with you and your guests again. I think it's exactly that. I think he goes for, this is how he negotiates, goes for a particular line, rattles a load of diplomatic cages in the way that only he does. And then the Art of the Deal book comes out, he goes to a particular page, and then we say, let's move forward with this. There are a lot of people have to understand that in America and their defense strategy, they are very concerned in regard to how Russian subs could come through. They're also very concerned with what China is up to. As you and I have discussed over a number of months, we've got to bear in mind there is this whole challenge to American hegemony and the fact that others want a bipolar world. This is what is going on. And with Greenland, if the ice then recedes back every 10 to 12 years, then various shipping lines then open up. They're concerned about that. And also, without being accused of being too conspiratorial, Thomas, Greenland does have minerals which are needed. Now, the other issue is when the amount of American military have been there on a base like the Thiel base in the past, and then starting to rescind that in 1951. We always at all these times have to go through history and bear all in this at geopolitically at every movement, I believe, with what is playing out today. But you asked that question. I think this is typical President Trump diplomatic behavior, and then he starts to get what he wants. Thomas.
Indeed. Do stay with us, gentlemen, as we move on to our next story, a related development. And the British Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, welcomed Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen, highlighting the strong and close relationship between the UK and Denmark. Starmer praised their shared commitment to NATO, emphasising the importance of a united military alliance. He also addressed recent developments regarding Greenland, noting that the withdrawal of tariff threats reflects pragmatism and common sense. Frederiksen thanked the UK for its unwavering support, particularly during challenging times. Let's listen in to both the leaders.
We can talk about a number of really important issues today. Greenland, obviously, Ukraine, obviously. Our position on Greenland has been set out now a number of times in recent days. And in terms of recent developments and the withdrawal of the threat of tariffs, I see that as a reflection of pragmatism, common sense, and sticking to our values and our principles. The hard yard's now finding a better way forward on the issue that we all agree on, which is security in the Arctic, is the next chapter here, and I look forward to discussing with you how we take the vital steps down that path. But you're very, very welcome. It's great to have you here. We've obviously spoken extensively on the phone in recent days, but to have the opportunity to meet and have private time together here is very welcome from our point of view. But we extend and enhance the great friendship that we have between our families and between our countries, and of course our personal relationship as well.
Thank you so much, Keir, for welcoming me and the Danish team here today. And from the bottom of my heart, I would like to thank you and UK for your very strong support to the Kingdom of Denmark. I think everybody recognizes that it has been quite a difficult time for us. And to know that you have good friends, strong allies, and that Europeans stand together, don't get divided, and stick to our, as you said, our common values, even in a world that is changing rapidly, is extremely important for all of us. So I would like to thank you for your very strong support. I like the British way of doing things. As you said, you are very pragmatic. You have a cup of tea and then you think a bit about everything. You get the facts on the table and then you find a way forward. And that is exactly what we're doing now.
That was the British and the Danish Prime Minister there speaking with one another about the whole situation. Keith, someone who didn't come unscathed from this situation, of course, the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, who was spoken about on Truth Social in quite a way, not something that would portray what we call a special relationship between the United States and the United Kingdom. How do you think that Europe as a whole has looked through this ordeal, and what might it lead to in the future from the United States?
Well, I think it's been a very good development. It's odd, isn't it, in politics? When you do something, always remember what's going to happen at the end. Trump is not the kind of person, as Mark has said, who's, I'm sure, has got Art of the Deal on the shelf behind Mark Sutherland over there. He looks at it every day. He's a very unusual politician. I'm not sure I agree with the Danish Prime Minister that the British way is to have a cup of tea and put all the facts on the table. Sometimes we do tend to do things without looking at the facts. But the victory here belongs to the NATO Secretary General. He's the one who has that very close relationship with Trump. And he probably said, well, the whole of NATO is united. If you do anything to Greenland, you're going to provoke Article 5. That's going to be brought into effect. And Trump would not want to bend the knee to anyone, and he wouldn't want to do it to Starmer or to Macron, who he used to get on very well with. He's happy to do it to Rutte. So I think what the Danes are saying is, thanks for your support. What Gavin Newsom said when he was at Davos, Gavin Newsom being the governor of California, possible presidential candidate in 2028, he told Europe to grow a spine. Don't just kowtow to this man all the time and give in. Start standing up. And as we all know, in life, you do have to stand up to people who are trying to behave in a way that is inappropriate. And that is certainly what Trump is trying to do. This is the first time, I think, we've seen Europe say, no, we're not going to do this. We're going to defend Greenland. We're going to send our people. Symbolic though it is, we're still going to send them there. And please do not invade Greenland because you'll have us to deal with. This is unprecedented. So he's taken heed of that and he's rode back from that. We've also got a lot of friends in Congress. As we know, the Speaker of the House of Representatives was here this week, 2 days ago. He addressed to the British Parliament. All these are very important factors in getting him to climb down.
Keith Vaz, thank you very much for joining us. Mark, do stay with us as we move on to our next story. And the Cuban President Miguel Diaz-Canel has voiced firm support for Venezuela's interim President Delcy Rodriguez. In a recent telephone call, Diaz-Canel has expressed solidarity with Caracas's new leadership, and this comes after Washington's January the 3rd operation that ousted former Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and elevated Delcy Rodriguez to interim power. Reports show that this move has deeply strained ties with the United States, with Cuba condemning the raid as a kidnapping. Cuba and Venezuela have long stood as close allies, with Caracas historically supplying Havana with oil and financial support in exchange for Cuban personnel and expertise. The recent US demands to cut off Venezuelan energy aid to Cuba have heightened regional tensions, prompting Havana to clarify the matter with its neighbour. Mark Sutherland joins us now to discuss this issue. Mark, of course, this situation in Venezuela has taken a bit of the background since all these Greenland developments. However, now Delcy Rodriguez remains in charge of Venezuela. What are your thoughts about the Cuban support for the interim government, and how might that move forward, given that Donald Trump has threatened Cuba directly after the operation for Maduro? But how do you think this might develop?
Respectfully, why am I surprised that Cuba would say that? If you have a socialist communist mindset, and we could go through so much history, and then you need to look at the way that that system has actually treated its own people, why so many people have tried to leave Cuba and end up in Florida and other parts of America and going for freedom. It's a bit like then you turn around to Venezuela and say, why have 6 million Venezuelans actually left their own country because of the communist mindset and suppression of their freedom there as well. As we just note in a previous conversation, it's all very well talking about certain individuals, but we have to go through history and see how they have then conducted themselves. Thomas, respectfully, I am not surprised at all. We are dealing with, this is the ideology, and remember, with Venezuela, we have to remember all the links that they then have with Iran, the Hamas, Hezbollah, the narco-terrorism that's been going on for many years, and then has been going on within South American countries for many years. And as I often say here, with you, delighted to say this to you yet again, that we have to go through history so much to then understand why we are here where we are. And Cuba, lots to talk about there. But why should we be surprised? Because it comes down to an ideologically and how you then view the world. Thomas.
Indeed. How do you see the situation in Venezuela developing? Of course, now we see Delcy Rodriguez, who's been there for nearly 3 weeks now, post Maduro capture. Donald Trump, in some quotations, saying that they're getting on very well, but as Venezuela starts to come to the forefront again of Donald Trump's priorities, do you see that continuing?
I think it will continuing. There is a shakedown. It's very interesting, as you've just said. You have then one opinion, and then slowly someone will then ease back and say, "Oh, we are getting on extremely well." And when President Trump says, "Well, you owe us a heck of a lot of oil," and then it's an asset, a very important asset that should be again used where you want to benefit for the benefits of your citizenry, not just benefiting those people in charge, and where people will dip their hand in this, that, and the other. That is then wrong. All we can do is hope and pray for better relationships in there, but also more importantly, as you've seen the celebrations around the world when Maduro was taken, the Venezuelan people that are outside the border, we have to constantly ask ourselves, why are they outside the country? 6 million of them. Why are they outside? They are outside because of the suppression and the way their country has gone from 1998. And to be fair, yes, people voted in a socialist mindset. Is then looking at how and why they got to that point. So, as I say, I think people are reminding us of what has gone on there for a number of years. And those relationships, we can only, my prayer is that will improve with America, and that the actual system there will then start to put the priorities and to actually benefit the own of their citizens within Venezuela. Thomas.
Yes, thank you very much, Mark Sutherland, for joining us. It's always a pleasure to talk to you here on the programme. We now move on to some breaking news, and the Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has told Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian that Turkey opposes any form of foreign intervention in Iran and strongly values its neighbours' peace and stability. According to a statement from the Turkish presidency, the two leaders spoke by phone amid Iran's worst domestic unrest since the 1979 Islamic Revolution. During the call, Erdogan emphasised that resolving Iran's internal challenges without further escalation would benefit not only Iran but also the wider region, including Turkey. Ankara, which shares a long border with Iran, has long stressed the importance of regional stability and dialogue. The Turkish presidency said the leaders discussed the latest developments inside Iran as protests and unrest continue to grip the country. Now we finish with some news from the entertainment world, and the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences has unveiled the full list of nominations for the 2026 Oscars, with Sinners emerging as the clear frontrunner. The Warner Brothers film leads the field with a record-breaking 16 nominations, including Best Picture, Best Director for Ryan Coogler, and Best Original Screenplay. Close behind is one battle after another with 13 nominations, while Frankenstein, Marty Supreme and Sentimental Value each earned 9 nods. The nominations were announced by Danielle Brooks and Lewis Pullman in a live presentation from the Academy's Samuel Goldwyn Theatre. This year also marks the introduction of a new Oscar category for Best Casting, the first new category added since Best Animated Feature in 2002. The Academy has also tightened voting rules, requiring members to confirm they have watched all nominated films in a category. Hosted by Conan O'Brien for the second consecutive year, the 2026 Academy Awards will air live on March the 15th. Well, that's all that we have time for this hour. Keep watching NewsX World for more international news updates.
What we can do